The most important thing that we can do for the Bitcoin blockchain is enable massive scalability. So at the Bitcoin Association, our goal is to reach over 1 million transactions per second sustained. And the reason why that's important is because we want to bring large corporate enterprises into blockchain technology and enable them to build their businesses. So scalability is important, but also stability. So we need to have a stable protocol that businesses can build on top of, and they can know that the work that they're doing today, there won't be any changes to the underlying protocols that they can build on the blockchain today, and it'll be worth it in 4 years. So stability is important in Bitcoin because, for example, I can create a transaction today that I don't broadcast to the network. I could put it under a mattress metaphorically, right? So let's say I wanted to hand down Bitcoins to my children in a trust. Well, maybe I wouldn't broadcast the transaction today, but in 10 years. So without a stable protocol, there's a chance that I could build a trust, try to broadcast the transaction and make that payment in 10 years. And if the protocol has changed, that transaction won't be valid. So stability is extremely important to us at the Bitcoin Association, but just generally in a blockchain ecosystem, because we want both businesses to have stability when they start building on the protocol, but also it's important because we don't want to make financial transactions invalid just because we're tinkering with the protocol. Stewardship is extremely important because when Bitcoin was created, 21 million coins were issued and they're distributed roughly every 10 minutes through the block reward. What has been created is a gigantic financial system that has billions of dollars of value locked up in it. So without a proper steward ensuring that the protocol is stable, that there's no tinkering happens, we're keeping financial stability in the network. So what we don't want is, for example, the whims of some central developer group coming in, changing the network, changing the protocol rules, and causing billions of dollars of financial damage to potential corporations, users, things like that. So stewardship is basically just here for us to accomplish two main tasks: to have stability to the protocol, and also to enable massive scalability so that it can be used by the world. Empowering the builders, to me, means building libraries for developers to use. So right now we're in a very early stage of the technology. If you try to build any kind of application or business, you're going to be having to build your own tooling. So what we need is more tooling. The BA right now funds open source libraries for application developers. We fund the development of the node software. So we empower builders just by enabling scalability on the blockchain. But it also means we need to have educational resources, marketing resources. We need to get this message out there because also we're fighting against a massive amount of misinformation in the space.
I want to share something that caught my eye, and also will explain, like I was mentioned before, action, reaction, supply and demand, why we pay attention to all these things. Let's introduce this to you. And it's about setting new standards in mining with Gorilla Pool. Now, as you guys know, I do mine, all right? And I'm looking to get another miner in the future. So I'll be at technically 1.5 miners for Caspa. Always been kind of on my mind if I should maybe possibly get into BSV mining, right? Now, I'm not guaranteeing it, but if anything, I'm learning more about all these things. And if anything, let's learn a little bit about why this is all important. On this outline, I've taken the liberty to go a little bit deeper of understanding just what the heck is going on with proof of work and why proof of work, let's face it, will always still stand out compared to things like proof of stake. Let's go ahead and share this. This is a video, believe it or not. And this is maybe a person you're familiar with, like Cool Cat. Maybe you're familiar with this guy. But it's this video that talks about setting new standards in mining with Gorilla Pool. Why am I sharing this tonight? Well, why wouldn't I share it tonight? Think about it. We have just completed the BTC halving. Yes, we're talking about Bitcoin, BSV, but in a lot of other opinions, this is the real true Bitcoin. What stands out in regards to this interview, and if anything, why is Kurt Wuckert Jr., who is the founder and CEO of Gorilla Pool, so passionately explaining the significance of Metanet, ARC, and this thing called Jungle Bus? He's going to also explain at some point that Gorilla Pool aims to redefine Bitcoin mining and create user-friendly performance ecosystem. Now, for some of you guys that don't do mining, I get it. Maybe it's not for you. You look at it just like, I'll just buy the coins and so on. I want to share this, and then after that, we're going to get into some of the significance of all of this. I'm going to show you some charts, even Caspa, because as you guys know, I mine Caspa. And I want you to understand when you've seen announcements in the past about, for example, Ethereum going from proof of work to proof of stake, and what proof of work blockchains kind of saw some action. You know where I'm going with this and so on. So if anything, smash the like. Let's go ahead and play this. I could play the whole thing because this whole thing is 16 minutes or 48 seconds. I don't want to do that, but I will cut it off at a certain part. You got to listen to what he's got to say. Got some great research for you guys tonight. Let's check this out. Here we go.
Basically, my theories, I said, you know what? No, I think my theories are right. I'm going to put my own money in. Me and a couple buddies put together Gorilla Pool, and now I'm going to tell you about it. So we are, just some predicate knowledge. If you don't know how Bitcoin mining works, going from left to right, top to bottom, transactions are broadcast to the network. They're gathered by the nodes of the network, which are the computers that collect that data. Whoever finds a valid proof of work using an ASIC miner, which is the thing on the top right over here, they win the hash, or they find the hash, they build the block. That block is propagated, the reconciled block is proposed with that proof of work. If it's accepted by the rest of the network, you get the coins in the subsidy as well as the fees of that block. That's all we're doing. Just so you know a little bit of how that works. So Gorilla Pool, again, left to right, this is what our operation looks like in a very basic sense. So you have the Bitcoin network, which is a little combobbled here on this screen. These are the nodes of the network. The one all the way on the right says GP, that's my company. Our nodes are giant data servers. They're big compute, okay? So our pool overlays on top of it. The pool allows collective hash power to connect to our pool. We collectivize that hash power, we solve these problems together. People get distributed their payouts relative to how much hash they provide to the pool. If you'd like to hash with us, please come speak to me after. I can connect you. We offer hosting and a bunch of other things. Here's what one of our mobile data centers looks like. We actually use the Titan product. The Titan product is produced by an old friend of mine from Chicago. This is a completely purpose-built integrated mobile data center. So it has internal plumbing, electricity, networking, racks. It is purpose-built for ASIC mining of Bitcoin. Here's me sitting inside of one with a couple of Antminer, what are these? Antminer XP Hydros, which at the time were not readily available to the market, but we got to test some because we had some of the only infrastructure able to do that, because my friend is one of the best hydro engineers in the world, and said, hey, I think I can build mobile data centers cheaper than anybody. So we got to be a tester and all this stuff. This is the kind of stuff we deploy if you buy ASIC hashing with us. These are some of the most efficient computers in the world. Here's me inside of another mobile data center. So the hashing part is one side of the business, but we also have to have your classic server infrastructure for validating transactions and propagating actual blocks. So those look a lot like computers that you would recognize, except they're a lot bigger and more powerful. And that's the non-specialized part of Bitcoin, but clearly it's getting more and more specialized. You can't just run a Bitcoin node on your Dell computer. It's certainly not in BSV. So when there are back-to-back-to-back gigabyte blocks, we're talking millions of transactions, which means tens of millions of signatures to validate and a data set to validate on a pretty quick schedule. All of a sudden you start getting kicked off the network very quickly. People still try to do this on BSV. People try to run their own node because that's how they think they're supposed to run their business, and they fail. They should be outsourcing literally all of this to us at Gorilla Pool. We're a global company. These are pallets of ASIC miners that both we own or you could own if you wanted to buy one and mine with us. That's what they look like on a rack. You can see the fans and the networking and all of this stuff, but we are a global operation. We have ASICs manufactured in 3 Asian countries, so it's China, Singapore, Malaysia. We typically mine in the Western Hemisphere for various reasons. And here's what our hashing operations look like. Here's a little bit of an interior look on one of our mobile data centers. All of these spots, you can see the ASICs we are mining in Quebec, Washington State, North Carolina, and then we have data centers in Miami, and then pretty close to here in Texas. And then we also have European operations for redundancy, and this is what the inside of some of these data centers look like from an interior view.
Are you struggling to become a successful trader? What if I told you I make between $1,000?
So our data stuff and our hashing stuff is globally distributed. It is politically distributed. It is in order to keep us distributed enough to not have to deal with, oh shoot, Canada made hashing illegal, now our operation's offline, or same with Texas or Finland or you know, wherever else. So we are a very, very resilient company when it comes to political, geographic, or you know, some kind of weather-based event, for example, which is really good because we've had a lot of crazy weather that has knocked things off a few times. So the stuff that's in Texas, it gets too hot, or the stuff that's up in Quebec, it gets too cold. So good thing we're distributed like that. So now what? I basically just described Bitcoin mining to you. There's lots of Bitcoin miners, lots of people out there that say, hey, buy our stock, you get to mine Bitcoin too, or you can do a cloud mining contract. All of them are fake. Literally the biggest names in Bitcoin mining are all fake companies. I mentioned in my previous presentation that Marathon Mining has never actually made $1 mining Bitcoin. They have done nothing but lose money from their core business model. They have made fantastic money raising money and then ultimately having their publicly traded stock, which is one of the best stocks you could have bought 3 years ago, but now they're barely hanging on by a thread. They're, every major public Bitcoin mining company is in reorganization of some sort right now as we speak. Well, it's a problem. That really sucks. Means they're bad at Bitcoin and they're good at old world businesses or fundraising or other things, which, that's the easy part. There's lots of MBAs and really good CFOs and good marketers and stuff like that that can do that stuff. Who's good at mining Bitcoin? Who's good at letting Bitcoin be the center of the economy that they're trying to build from an infrastructure standpoint? Well, I would argue it's almost nobody. And I've put my money where my mouth is to prove it. So, Bitcoin network, Gorilla Pool nodes. There's a very interesting problem that the blockchain poses us. I've been talking about big data. I talked about big data in my previous presentation, why big data matters, why you shouldn't be an infrastructure partner in the network, why you should rely on a company like mine. But the tools haven't been there. How do you get that data? How do you repurpose that data? How do you access that data in a way that is extremely reliable and extremely cheap, someone that you can sign a service level agreement with, somebody that will insure your data against loss and all these other things? Well, that's been a little bit of a pie in the sky thing. Remember, I had people telling me that, oh, Kurt, you're just a theory guy. That's all great in theory. Where does the rubber hit the road? So we built a product. The product is Jungle Bus. It's one of the products. A blockchain is a monolithic piece of data. It's just a big distributed hard drive. So if you didn't have logic on your computer's hard drive as to like, hey, where are my JPEGs, or where's my QuickBooks files, or how can I even open my browser? Your computer has logic that routes which thing you are actually looking for. And they're very good at those things because those data structures are standardized and operating systems are optimized to use those standards. Well, that doesn't exist in Bitcoin. Blockchains are just a big chunk of data. So what do? Well, the typical way to do it is to be that infrastructure player in your own network. You need to run the full node. You need to run a query. If you have a slow computer, it's slow to access that data. Well, that sucks. Now all these promises, I'm up here saying blockchain's going to change the world. You try to do it. You can't even figure out how to get your nodes synced. You didn't actually accomplish anything. You're really irritated. Now you need to hire somebody who you need to trust, and that sucks. So Jungle Bus does two things. It creates that logic. It defines various logics for various protocols so that you can easily access data in a known and defined and clearly documented manner. It is also extremely efficient at accessing that data in a decentralized manner and serving it to you. So if you wanted to build a very high-speed, data-intense business on the BSV blockchain, you should be a customer of Jungle Bus, the product, Gorilla Pool, the company, and you should pay us for access to that blockchain data in a way that is filtered and served to you. So instead of running a full BSV node at a cost of maybe $1,000 a month, plus whatever it takes to have a sysadmin, make sure that it's up all the time and that the data is good, that's already a lot of money right there. You can pay us something like $15 a month to sync just the data you need and keep it on your own system and have API access to our nodes that validate it with proof of work and our reputation and our guarantees and whatever insurance that you want to apply to it. So this allows you to very cheaply and reliably deploy a business that utilizes blockchain data in a way that you cannot do it in any other blockchain. This is a proprietary tool. We architected it internally. It's built entirely by our internal staff. It allows the blockchain to be that cornerstone of your business without any compromise. We do not have a competitor on this product. What is Metanet? That's like a 2-hour presentation right here. But right now the internet works with a bunch of interoperating protocols that know how to communicate with each other, which is why you can send a Gmail email to an Outlook.com address. They both just use the same internet email protocols, and so it just works. Well, in blockchains, this is why we have 20,000 blockchains that don't communicate with each other. They use completely different stacks. They use different logic to make all this stuff happen. That's no fun. So what we've done is, with these data tools and the ability to serve this data, you can create an overlay network that works much like the internet, but is deployed on top of Bitcoin BSV. So with that, it allows you to send data packets over Bitcoin transactions instead of over just packet from server to server. So this allows you to encrypt data of any size from any point and decrypt it at the receiving location. So you get rid of man-in-the-middle attacks, you solve all kinds of security, like cybersecurity problems. And it allows you actually to be faster than the existing internet as long as your stack in Bitcoin actually works, which is what we're working on, is being essentially an ISP. So we're trying to redefine Bitcoin mining as this weird industrial thing that people don't understand. And we want to be more like AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, where you just like, I don't know, I pay $50 a month and I have access to this whole internet thing. That's what we're trying to be. This is the business model that we're trying to create to allow you to use Bitcoin the way that you currently use high-speed internet. This is complicated looking. I promise you it's not that complicated in practice. How do you broadcast data to Bitcoin? You currently could have a wallet, you have a Handcash wallet. Handcash wallet connects to an API that broadcasts your transaction from their server to a Bitcoin node. That's all well and good. The problem is at a certain scale, certain things start to break down. Either they should run their own node, which they shouldn't, and I know they don't. I got a CEO over here, we've had this conversation a million times. But then that begs the question, okay, so what do you do? Well, somebody's got to create a bunch of extra logic for that. And then you're using various APIs and other things. So you start creating another layer of interwoven interdependencies and all these things. A couple of years ago, there was a product created called Merchant API. Worked pretty well up to a certain scale, and then they realized, oh shoot, Merchant API only connects to one node, and if it fails to rebroadcast, and we're breaking things again. So what Arc is a high-power transaction engine. We figure it's about 1,000 times more efficient than Mappy, which means it's good for probably 100,000 transactions a second going into Bitcoin. And what it does is if it fails, instead of just failing and saying error, start over, manually reboot, whatever, it has this tumbler built into it that just keeps rebroadcasting it to our node, which is great, but it also sends it peer-to-peer to the rest of Bitcoin. So even if we're not the ones that can pick it up, maybe another node will pick it up. So what we're doing is we're sort of scattershotting it to the entire network for the sake of making sure that Handcash does not have to call us and say, hey, 40 million transactions ago, there's a missing transaction and it's screwing the entire system up. We can now just mitigate that, because the second that starts to happen, the system starts digging backwards and just flinging transactions back at the network until it figures it out.
All right. The next part he was going to mention was, this is another thing that nobody else, as far as the competitors, have been able to do. You got to appreciate the whole thing of, for example, that, they didn't just wing it, that they prepared for the oh crap moments. When we talk about, Bitcoin being able to scale, you can't have things about reaching a certain threshold or, those transactions that failed, no big deal, right? It's a big deal. Absolutely a big deal. Basically, it's like this. Remember the whole thing of Ethereum going from proof of work to proof of stake? Well, that announcement, of course, happened long before, the actual date. But let me just share this with you guys, all right, just in case you forgot about this. So on September 15th, 2022, officially speaking, you had Ethereum went from, for example, proof of work to proof of stake. And, you know, what really happened in regards to um, everything from there? You know what I mean? Well, you have to keep in mind there was an action reaction. And that's basically one of the main things I want to share with you guys tonight. So, some people ask, well, I'm new to all this. Why did Ethereum, for example, switch from proof of work to proof of stake? Well, just like you saw in the outline, scalability issues. Yeah, proof of work limited the throughput and speed of the Ethereum's network as miners needed to find new blocks and, of course, nodes. Ethereum's capacity was around 15, TPS, for example. God, dinosaur slow. Before switching to proof of stake, which was far from enough to meet the growing demand of dApps, DeFi services, and so on. You ever notice when it comes to Ethereum, you always have to go with a third party, right, to be able to scale? A roll up, for example, layer 2, and so on. And while I'm not saying that some of these layer 2 solutions are bad or anything, but you got to keep in mind from the perspective of, throughput and proof of work, right? Going to proof of stake. Well, you can have an idea of where they're at, right? They had to do something because they're kind of stuck in the mud. And some people still feel as though they're stuck in the mud. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole tonight, but something I want to share with you guys in regards to action, reaction, and understanding all this. So this is Ethereum Classic. And like I pointed out in regards to the report, September 15th, 2022 was when Ethereum went from, proof of work to proof of stake, right? And what you see here, I think kind of speaks for itself. So zooming in a little bit more, this is ETC. And as you can see, I've already taken the liberty to, get into a specific part that I felt as though was worth pointing out. What you'll see here is the time period. So right here, and I understand I could use other outlets like, CoinGecko and so on, but for the purposes of what we're doing is understanding basically the month to 2 months after the announcement of Ethereum going to, from proof of work to proof of stake, watch what kind of happens there, right? So a lot of, things were created, I should say. This is ETC, but understand that you had a direct reaction for a few months, basically, after all this happened, okay? And as we got to the beginning of 2024, over the course of this year, look at this. There's demand for proof of work still, right? And this is the beginning of the year, roughly, right here. Yeah, you saw Ethereum Classic, which tanked all the way down to, I don't know, I would say about roughly $15 right around the time of FTX, which you see right here, late 2022, December 2022, right around $15. And then the first significant thing was basically doing like a 2x, okay, beginning of this year. And then it jumped up even higher, all right, to $38 right around March. So roughly about a month and a half ago. Now again, this is Ethereum Classic. We're talking about, Bitcoin, BSV. We get to the next example. As you guys know, I have Caspa. I mine Caspa. Let's give another example of action, reaction, supply, and demand. So with Caspa, for example, check out what happened with them. 9/17/2022, literally 2 days after the whole thing of, Ethereum's announcement and so on. Well, don't have exactly direct reaction, but something starts to pick up literally like a month after, right? word gets around about CASPA, proof of work. Look what happens there. So we get more and more into the beginning of this year. Wow. Look at that. Actually, let's start off like right here. And even to March or April. Look at that. Boom. There's another example. Now that's CASPA. What about the main topic, BSV? Well, let's share this. Action reaction. So this is 2 days after, give or take, in regards to, let me just double check my settings. Yeah. In regards to the news, call it buy the rumor, sell the news, call it whatever you want. Here's BSV, kind of like a lot of sideways action for a while, right? Then we have, for example, just like CASPA and also just like Ethereum Classic, something big happens. Beginning of the year, look at that increase, guys. Look at that steady increase. You don't think proof of work still has value? It has tremendous value. Look at this. So January, that leap, especially from that news, you went all the way from roughly $50 to, about 2x and even higher, right? Like, last month, 115. I understand, with the news about the whole thing of, COPA, it's going to affect it. But still, you understand, if we're going to talk about narratives and talk about the tech, we should focus more on the tech. We should focus on the proof of work concepts more than just, I guess you could say, retail public opinion. Because at the end of the day, I think the tech is what stands out, when it comes to proof of work, because it's these companies that want to scale, right? As you can see. And that's a nice, that's a nice chart. I mean, let's just be honest about that. That's not too bad at all. Okay. So in my notes, something I want to share with you guys. So at the very beginning of the outline, you heard this gentleman specifically talk about some of these things, right? And basically speaking, I mean, you guys are very familiar with him and so on. But it's Kurt Wuckert, okay, sharing this whole thing. And I think it was obviously worth sharing, to say the least. But the bottom line is, like I said, the action, the reaction. So in my notes, he mentions just briefly about UTXO. And when I did my CASPA deep dive, I talked more than enough about UTXO and the significance and explain it. So you guys are more than welcome to check that out if you choose to do so. But for some of you guys that are new, who might be asking, did Ethereum Classic, for instance, use UTXO? Since Ethereum Classic, for example, you can mine on it and so on. Well, no, the answer is no. Ethereum Classic does not use UTXO, which is the unspent transaction output. Remember how you heard Kurt talk about that unspent? Right. Ethereum Classic, like Ethereum itself, utilizes an account-based model for managing balances and transactions on the blockchain. In an account-based system, as we know, each address represents an account, of course, with a balance. Transactions directly modify these account balances, but unlike UTXO systems where specific outputs from previous transactions are used as inputs for like new transactions, again, the answer is no, that Ethereum Classic doesn't use UTXO. But what's really interesting is CASPA and especially BSV. What is the main difference between CASPA's model of UTXO and even BSV's UTXO? And if anything, what one is more significant, if there is such a thing? Well, while both utilize the UTXO, unspent transaction output model for handling transactions, of course, on their respective blockchains, it's important to understand the subtle differences between the two and the implementation or focus, I should say, due to their overall goals. I'm going to give you guys a brief breakdown. It's the similarities. So, three main things I want to get into in regards to UTXO based similarities. So, as we may know or may not know, or maybe this is your first time tuning in, transactions are built by spending existing UTXOs, unspent coins, just like how you heard your talk about the whole thing. But it's creating new ones, right? In regards to UTXO. If you think about that, that's value, right? That's a lot of value because compared to something like that doesn't do that, which is Ethereum Classic. It's not account based. Unlike Ethereum, there are no accounts on the protocol level. Wallets manage UTXOs for the users. What about transparency? UTXO in itself offers a clear view of coin movement, of course, on the blockchain. Again, Kurt touched basis on that for a bit. What about other potential differences? Well, there's specific UTXO handling. While both use UTXOs, there could be variations in how they handle things like dust outputs. What is that exactly? Well, it's basically kind of like how it sounds. Very small transactions or UTXOs, very, very small UTXOs, like maybe micro UTXOs or even transaction fees. What are some of the goals between the two? Well, you have to keep in mind CASPA might prioritize scalability and efficiency in its UTXO implementation, while BSV might focus on the transaction output capacity of things, right? Both have value, but from a miner's perspective, well, a lot of significance in regards to both things. Do I mine both? Well, I don't know about that, but I think this is worth pointing out. Hear me out on this. While it's difficult to say definitively speaking which UTX model is more significant, I'll let that be up to you if you want to take more of a deeper dive into it. You need to realize that both CASPA and even BSV are relatively like different when it comes to their distinct goals. Some people say they're young projects. I would definitely say CASPA is. I don't know if BSV I would consider too young, but I get where people are coming from. This part I want to get into in regards to my notes. CASPA emphasizes scalability, low fees, so its UTXO design in itself might be optimized, of course, for some of these aspects. BSV, on the other hand, focuses on staying true to what, and this is probably what you guys are screaming in the chat, it stays true to the original Bitcoin protocol. And isn't that a great thing? And it increases transaction capacity. Its UTXO implementation might reflect, of course, that specific goal. I think you've already seen that. I think you saw Kurt literally say that word for word in so many words or different words. So, yes, we all need to pay attention to what's going on with CASPA's UTXO model and BSV's model. I think both have value, obviously. I look at CASPA as being like the more modern approach when it comes to the concept of proof of work and so on. But BSV, as far as transaction throughput, has to take the cake because, for example, it sticks to original Bitcoin. Now, when we talked about the whole thing of TPS and maybe why you're here, I want to give a shout out once again to Digital GG, because he has this, and this comes straight from X. Let's go ahead and share this. You will see here, like he says, insane. Absolutely insane. Bitcoin SV had a block with over 3 million TPS BSV / Terra node to be released before the end of 2024. And we talk about supply and demand. My God. Can I show you an example? Well, as you can see here, when you go to the top part of this, TPS, transactions per second, this one, we confirmed this in the past, over a million, which, guys, let's just be honest. I mean, that's not too shabby, right? But as you go further down, look at it for yourself. 3,380,484. And look at that in regards to, what was that, 121.18 gigabytes in regards to the size, the block size. Nothing can touch this. And while that was more than impressive enough, there's also this. And this comes straight from Satoshi. Thank you to Satoshi. Always killing it. when it comes to the BSV news, right? So Satoshi has this Teranode reporting 4.6 million TPS at 1.75 billion transactions in a block. Shows the height of that. Timestamp was April 26, 2024. And you have all the details. You can see what miner was used, block reward. So it's all there. And what's really, really interesting is to see, again, the TPS 4,679,340. I mean, does anything even come close to this? Well, not necessarily, but it does get even better. I was pretty impressed with that. And then on top of that, Digital G, member of our community, aka GG, he sends me over this in the DM. Look at this for yourself. This is also just as impressive, if not even more impressive, right? So you see this, and basically, I mean, Teranode Bitcoin SV had 2 blocks with over 9.9 million plus TPS, and another block with 4.6 million TPS. So, that was a few days ago, but still a lot better than the report that we had originally. So yeah, Teranode is going to come soon, and let's just blow this up a little bit more so you guys can kind of see it on the other screen, because it just makes it a little bit bigger, to say the least. But very, very impressive when you get more into like the nitty gritty about this. So here it is over here, and as we scroll down, yeah, you see it. 7.11 gigabyte was this the size of that particular block, but it took. Or I should say, it takes the cake. I mean, man, look at that TPS, 9,961,000. So it's just clear as day that you see BSV, original Bitcoin, basically scale. I mean, that should be your key takeaway here, is that, it's scaling. And what happens next when Teranode is fully released? We get more reports of 10 million, 20 million, over 1 billion at some point. Heck, Satoshi, when we did our collaboration, he was talking about over 1 trillion. I know that sounds like it's just unfathomable, but believe it or not, it can be done. Hold on to your BSV. I mean, I'm telling you flat out, not financial advice, but that's what I'm choosing to do. I mean, we all got to do what we got to do. I get it. We have families, different, reasons to make an exit plan, but jeez, guys, I mean, BTC doesn't have anything close to this. Not even close at all. So my main thing is, I want you guys to understand that we can basically give into a narrative and get scared in regards to the whole thing of, there's this narrative that Craig Wright is not Satoshi Nakamoto and so on. Again, I understand that when it comes to the internet of trust, there's going to be some issues. I also understand that it's not like this thing is just going to disappear and go off into the sunset forever or anything like that. Companies are recognizing as tech, and they want to be able to scale. They are more concerned about its tech compared to a retail narrative. Always understand what the institutions are looking into, right? Not just our retail, like what we're looking into and so on. For me, this spells value. We talk about the internet of trust. What about the internet of value? This still is beyond amazing when you see actual screenshots of the actual reports. So again, nothing, in my opinion, comes close to this, and I will still choose to cover BSV, whether it's a unpopular retail thing to do or not. So with that said, we're going to close out the BSV segment of the night.